The purpose of this press conference is really to inform the viewers and the local community as to my intention to contest the elections as a prospective MP in the Moseley and Hall Green constituency of Birmingham. I have parked a 25-year career, legal career, to one side and have taken to the streets effectively to stand as an independent candidate, really with Jeremy Corbyn. I have been inspired by that man who was the former leader of the Labour Party, potentially to have been the Prime Minister of this country. But that man was a man of principle. He took a stance not only on Palestine and Gaza, he has taken a stance on many fronts in the past for social justice, for international human rights, wherever he has seen illegal, immoral, unethical application of a foreign policy, and also for local issues. He has been the voice of many people in this country. What has amazed me has been the stance of the Labour Party leader now, Keir Starmer. And I think it's important that I set out right from the outset that I have been previously employed by the Crown Prosecution Service as a senior Crown Prosecutor and a Crown Advocate, as a barrister at the Crown Prosecution Service, grade 4 on their panel, which is the highest grade on the Crown Prosecution Service panel, as a prosecutor, prosecuting some of the most serious offences in the country, whether that be murders, rapes, gang offences, human trafficking, frauds, some of the most serious and complex cases I've prosecuted. I have been involved and worked at the Crown Prosecution Service when Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. I saw him join the Crown Prosecution Service whilst I was there and leave the Crown Prosecution Service whilst I was still there at the Crown Prosecution Service. I saw Keir Starmer as a family man. I saw a side of him that was ethical, that was legal. I looked up to him at one time, and I thought that he's a man, obviously, very highly professional and educated as a King's Counsel now, Queen's Counsel then, as an international human rights lawyer. What really amazed me and made me stand away from him was the day when Keir Starmer, when the atrocities began in Gaza, for him to come out and say that Israel has the right to stop gas, water and food supplies to innocent people in Gaza. That really concerned me, troubled me. It troubled me not only on an ethical basis, but on a professional basis, on a humanitarian basis. I was amazed that how could an international human rights lawyer make such a stance. Thereafter, what I saw and what I still continue to see is Keir Starmer sport Netanyahu, a prime minister who potentially stands to be arrested for international war crimes. The international criminal courts are contemplating starting proceedings against Israel. And for Keir Starmer, as an international human rights lawyer, to focus and unreservedly stand with Israel has caused me great concern. I'm a man of principle. I'm a man of dignity. I'm a man of respect. I'm a professional person. My own professionalism in the legal career and my ethics and my upbringing and my own beliefs have led me to take a stance that I cannot, under any circumstances, support such a party and such a leader. I've been a member of the Labour Party for many years. My family have been a member of the Labour Party. Many of my constituents in Hall Green and Moseley have been long-standing members of the Labour Party, whether that be the chair of the local constituency, Sue Payne, whether that be the regional director of the Labour Party, and many other loyal Labour Party workers who have all decided to leave the Labour Party simply because the Labour Party is now no different to the Tory party. In fact, they are the same, as others have described them, two cheeks. You can describe them the double-sided of the same piece of paper, double-sided of a coin, however you describe it. The fact of the matter is, it's a right-wing party, Labour Party now. It doesn't stand for fundamental human rights. It doesn't stand for social justice. It doesn't stand for equality. It doesn't stand for the rights that my father and many others in this country sported and believed and felt that this is a party that represented our views. When you get to that stage, you have to ask yourself, do I just sit silently on the fence like many others have inside of the Labour Party, or do I take a stance? And I decided to step forward, take a proactive stance, and stand independently and stand with someone with morals, Jeremy Corbyn. So that was really the decision that forced me effectively to come out, because I could see a party potentially, if the independents can make the impact that we hope that we do, won't get a majority in the next general election, but is looking to forming a government. And if it does form a government, this Labour Party needs to realise that the millions of people that have been protesting out on the streets during the course of months, nearly coming up to a year, those millions of people, most of whom were loyal to the Labour Party. Those included people of faith, people of different faiths, people of no faiths, people of different backgrounds, races, cultures, religions, all coming together on a common platform, and that platform being the seizure or asking and demanding the stoppage of illegal atrocities that are taking place at a country. What I also saw was this same party, previously led by Tony Blair, during the Iraq War. Let's just look at that for a moment. The Iraq War was based on false information. When people like myself and many others in this country were protesting out on the streets saying, "Don't kill innocent people, your intelligence could not be safe," this party, the Labour Party, under Tony Blair, made us all believe that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. They went to war in Iraq, destroyed a complete nation, the complete infrastructure of a nation, destroyed the nation, 6 years of destruction. And then Tony Blair came out and ultimately said, well, we got it wrong. I can tell you, as a prosecutor, I can tell you that one innocent life taken carries the person, the perpetrator, serving a life sentence in these courts. I have been part and parcel of the criminal justice system by bringing those people to justice and ensuring that justice is served, seen to be served and served. What we saw here is a Labour Party and the leader, Tony Blair, effectively getting completely away with causing mass destruction and destroying a complete nation. It is these matters, together with then seeing so many local issues, where our Labour Party, our former Labour Party, the party that we as a community, that we as millions of people around this country supported, no longer stands with us. For example, on matters that I'll touch on in due course, the NHS waiting list, their policy in relation to that, free school meals, scrapping of that, Birmingham City Council that is currently led by a Labour government who have taken it into bankruptcy. All of these matters have made me feel that this Labour Party is no longer the party that represents our views, and I've decided to come forward and take part in the forthcoming general election. So there are many pressing issues. If we deal with local issues on a community basis here in the United Kingdom, putting away the ethical foreign policy that we have spoken about, which is obviously not being applied ethically by the government at the moment. Locally here, there are many, many issues that affect people. Whether that be housing is a massive issue. Families are struggling to find accommodation. Whether that be the long waiting lists that people are now waiting. I myself very recently, a few months back, experienced attending a local hospital, an accident emergency with my elderly father, over 95 years of age, being on a stretcher from Friday evening until Sunday afternoon. I mean, just think for a moment. An elderly gentleman who was close to end of life, Friday evening to Sunday afternoon, he was on a stretcher at accident emergency. I sat there with him. I experienced and I saw the pain. Only last night, I was at an accident emergency department with a very close friend of mine, and the chaos there, honestly, I can say this, it seemed like we were in a third world country. This is the state of a National Health Service that we were once proud of. A National Health Service that was funded by us, was funded by the taxpayers, was funded and supported by many of us, and we found pride in it. We thought this is a very good system in this country. They've destroyed it. completely. School meals, burial grounds. There are no local burial grounds. I know part of my community feel very passionate about this. The local burial ground for them is some 15 miles away to where they live. So we need better services, bereavement services, coroner services. There's another massive area where, again, the government keeps saying, well, there's no funds available. Well, if you actually have a look at the funds, there are funds available. There have always been funds available. The reality of the matter is, Labour Party here in Birmingham have mishandled those funds. It's been maladministration. Let me tell you, let's face it, let's be honest here. What has happened to the funds? They were underpaying staff, and those staff members took them to court, city council staff took them to court, and they did a settlement with them. And that settlement meant that our money, millions of pounds of our money, has had to be paid out in legal costs and in order to pay compensation. That's where our money is gone. That is a direct result of maladministration. Maladministration by a Labour-led government, Labour-led council. So where there are funds available, provided they are spent correctly, properly, and where services are needed, whether that be for youth services, where there is a desperate demand, mental health facilities, drug rehabilitation centres, protecting the green belt on our environmental issues, that's where the money needs to be spent, of course, with the National Health Service and other services as well. Better educational system. Our money has been spent on wrong services, and I'm afraid the consequences of that have been legal action. The consequences of the legal action have then led to a complete bankruptcy of the local council. Who is responsible? The Labour Party. Who is responsible? The council. Who is now being penalised is us again, is the community again. What the policy that they've now got in order to get out of this is to increase council taxes, increase our bills. Ask us, me and everyone else in my constituency and in the wider constituencies here in Birmingham to increase our council tax by 20%. Just think for a moment. In a cost of living crisis that we are already facing, with energy bills going up, I was at a food bank only this afternoon. Honestly, you'll be amazed at the number of people that came to that food bank, and I went a little bit further with them and asking them, well, what exactly is it that has brought you to this food bank? And people were saying that my top-ups on my electrics have gone up, my gas has gone up, I can't afford it anymore, my cost of living has gone up, the groceries and the food prices have gone up. Families are relying on food banks in order to survive, and yet the council are increasing council tax. In return, what are we getting? We have all had one weekly collection of refuse. The rubbish collection, every week, once a week. By increasing our council tax, they are taking that down to twice, once every 2 weeks, every fortnightly. Just think for a moment. Just look at the state of the streets in Birmingham outside here, particularly in our constituency and these local areas. It's like we're walking in a third world country. That's where the weekly collection, when that goes to fortnightly collection every 2 weeks, I think it will be difficult to walk down these streets. Who's responsible? The local authority, the council. Who's paying for it? We are. Where's our money going? In legal actions. Why is it going in legal actions? Because they cannot properly handle our funds. This has been a very long-standing mindset of people that change can only come about within a party. Let me make my position very clear. I also believe that it is good to have voice within mainstream parties. I'm not against that. But that voice certainly has to be a voice that stands up and represents the views of that constituency. We have seen Labour Party MPs who have stood up and raised the voice. We haven't stood independent candidates against those people because we know those people are effective inside of that party. However, you have the likes of my local MP here, Tahir. You have other MPs in other constituencies. When the going got strong, these people backed off. They didn't have the backbone. They effectively stood up and tried to speak. Party whip, party pressure was such that they ended up having to apologise. You're then left with asking yourself, well, what value is that voice within the party? Myself, I'm an advocate of that. I ask myself, my local MP, what value is his voice within the party if he is going to have to stand up for a couple of minutes, if that, and try to represent the views of the local constituents and then immediately have to apologise? In fact, he's made the position far worse for us. because he has demonstrated that my constituency that I represent are prepared to beg and go on our knees and apologise to Keir Starmer and apologise to Rishi Sunak for calling out the atrocities that are taking place in Palestine. I'm sorry, you are better without that voice. So what happens in return? What happens in return is that you have independence. When you have an independent candidate, what you will see is that the Labour Party voice that existed or barely existed inside of the party, that same voice, that same MP is now shivering, is shaking, is absolutely afraid of losing his seat. That pressure, not just for him, but for the Labour Party as a whole, believing and being able to see that they might lose 50, 40, 50 seats across the country, and that might be what they need in order to form a majority, they might not get it. That's the voice of the independents. That's the pressure that the independents can bring about. I worked on the case of Yassin Malik. Yassin Malik was a political activist who has been protesting his innocence, but the Indian authorities have given him a life sentence and now are making attempts to convert his sentence into a death penalty. I have taken that case from here, being the chair of a defence committee that was set up by Barrister Sultan Mahmood, the president of Azad Kashmir, into Parliament and represented that case in Parliament and asked people and asked the MPs and this government to recognise the fact that this is injustice and more needs to be done, and our government needs to place pressure on Indian authorities to ensure that that man receives a fair trial. Many people ask what it is that I've done during the course of the last 5 or 10 years for Kashmir. Kashmir Peace Forum International set up an entity to mobilise individuals and activists across the country. I am part of the core committee of that in order to provide Kashmiris a platform here in the UK so that their voice can be heard. And I've taken their voice and helped an infrastructure and a framework set up to take their voice and their concerns and the atrocities such as the revocation of Article 370 and other breaches that are taking place, such as the illegal settlement of India on disputed territory of Kashmir. I've taken that into Parliament here and I'll continue to raise that voice for Kashmiri people. I have gone to Pakistan in order to deliver training to local police, senior police officers in Azad Kashmir and Pakistan in order to set up a limitation period so that cases can be finalised within 6 months to a year, rather than people waiting there for 6 years. With my skill set, with my experience, I've delivered training and presentations to the Bar Council, to the Chief Justice and the police in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir so that people can have a fair trial. That's the type of work that I've done, completely funded for and paid for by myself, but for the sake of communities. On Kashmir issues, on Yassin Malik case, on police training, on the training to the judiciary, on the training to the Bar Council, I have taken advice and guidance, and I have worked with former Prime Ministers such as Raja Farooq Adil Saab and the current President, Barrister Sultan Mahmood Saab, in order to bring about change so that I can assist in any way possible in bringing about change for justice and fairness and equality and fair trials. I have always said that there are two elements here: activism and strategic thinkers and those who set up platforms. You cannot do one without the other. The most effective way of doing it is for having people like myself who are out on the streets protesting, being activists, but also people like myself who sit on the main table in Parliament, set up frameworks with governors, with regulators of social housing, with the police, with the Chief Justices, with Prime Ministers, with presidents, raising voices so that what the activists do on the streets, that voice gets carried forward at a larger platform to have real impact. All of this done completely voluntarily in my own time for the community. My work on Kashmir wasn't just localized. I in fact visited the border of India and Kashmir. I spent time with those soldiers inside of Kashmir in order to see the life that they live. And what that gave me was a proper insight, the life that they live and the risks that they take in order to protect our borders from India. And I've spent time with them, and that has given me a good insight, and I'll continue to support any endeavours that they carry out for the Kashmiri people.